You gotta put your guard back, put them back. You gotta get your guard back, get them back. I'm asking where your guard at, where's he at? We gotta get them back, gotta put them back. You gotta get your guard back, get them back. You gotta put your guard back, put them back. I'm asking where your guard at, where's he at? We gotta get them back, gotta put them back. You gotta put your guard back in your raps. Cause if you ain't talking, that shit's a trap. You got this devil telling you how to act, what to think, what to drink, how to write your raps. He took your culture and he ain't trying to give it back. But you did in the head, so you're cool with that. I speak God and you ain't trying to fool with that. If that's your mind, then we know who's ruling that and what school you at. Every line you remind me where your diamonds at. But they ain't shining and you lying about your paper stack. You've been broke since the devil wrote your contract. Lost your soul on the road to the money sack. You said your culture's hip-hop, well I question that. Cause you ain't cultivating nothing that was truly black. You pack a gat and your every single target's black. You lack the facts, so you gotta get your guard back. Your guard back, put them back. You gotta get your guard back, get them back. I'm asking where your guard at, where's he at? We gotta get them back, gotta put them back. You gotta get your guard back, get them back. You gotta put your guard back, put them back. I'm asking where your guard at, where's he at? We gotta get them back, gotta put them back. And for why brothers got my back, I'm throwing flames at these wannabe rap cats. Blazing inferno, I'm the man that broke 1,000 chains. The flamethrower, I'll be burning down your house of pain. Your reign is over, now the sons of God have made it back. We're taking over like I'm flowing over butter tracks. Shit-clack, clack, I'm a rebel with a godly cause. Follow me now on a journey back to godly laws. No turning back, we gotta seize the power to define. God body, God head with the God mind. The whole nine, New Jerusalem, the finish line. My light shines, opposition can't diminish mine. Back to the subject, cause the song I hear be lacking substance. While in the game, y'all be talking loud and saying nothing. Ain't that a shame, but I swear we're gonna set it straight. Time for dinner and we're eating off of God's plate. You gotta put your guard back, put them back. You gotta get your guard back, get them back. I'm asking where your guard at, where's he at? We gotta get them back, gotta put them back. You gotta get your guard back, get them back. You gotta put your guard back, put them back. I'm asking where your guard at, where's he at? We gotta get them back, gotta put them back.
God is in you, God is in me. Only God can set us free from the belly of this beast. God is in you, God is in me. Only God can set us free from the belly of this beast.
Peace and blessings. My name is ZERAHKYAH. I am living in Boston, Massachusetts. This here is an open letter to Ammi, and please understand that it is my nature to never want to air dirty laundry in front of the world, particularly the laundry of a community that I held so near and dear to me. and I love with all of my heart, mind, and soul. I had tried to write, and I actually did write, a letter and send it on at least 10 different occasions, and they were intercepted every time. Every letter was intended to go directly to Ben Ammi, and I had been promised by so many people that it would make it into the rock. And every time the letter went to Israel, it fell into the abyss somehow, somewhere, and those who had promised that they would help me, they ended up aligning themselves with those who had initiated my demise within the confines of the kingdom, or the African Hebrew Israelite community. Again, it was not my desire, never my desire, to air dirty laundry, but in my effort to get my message to Ben Ammi, Ben Israel, this was the only means that I had, and so I'm going to use any moral means necessary to affect the change that needs to be affected. And please know that I'm speaking with all sincerity, and I'm bound by truth. And those names that I'm willing to, that I will mention, I am willing to stand before them or have them stand before me in a court-type fashion. And those who had testified against me and did everything within their means to destroy my life, I would like to cross-examine them or allow them to cross-examine me and speak up against me the way that they had spoken against me when I wasn't present. The key figures involved in my case, of course, my former Isha, formerly known as Vashti Eshet ZERAHKYAH, now known as Leviah Eshet Nahum, Ak Royale of Cleveland, Ak Kima of Cleveland, Prince Aharon, formerly of Cleveland, I believe he's now residing in Jerusalem or in Dimona, Nasik Asiel, Sar Eliyahu. It goes on, and I will never forget Kohen Yehuda. There were so many of the Kohanim that had heard my story, gave me their degree of counsel, all to no avail, and had promised that the word would get to the throne, and it never did. I can't, I would be remiss to not mention there were at least 4 different priests. I spoke to Nasik Elkanan, I spoke to Nasik Emmanuel. I know that it was said that Nasik Ram had been one of those who witnessed against me in favor of Nasik Aharon and against myself when they were talking to Nasik Asiel on the telephone. He called several people to witness against me. And as I said, I am willing to have all of those who spoke up against me to come back to the witness stand and allow me to cross-examine them, or put me on the witness stand and allow them to say the same things that had been said when I wasn't present. And I think in all fairness, that is what should happen. In D.C., it was Nasik Emmanuel, Ator Baruch, Ator Yatziliel, Ator Amios, Kohen Mikael, but to a lesser degree, the major Kohen that played a vital role in what had happened to me is Kohen Ben Yehuda, who still shares an affectionate relationship with all of those that were extremely close to the involvement of what had happened. With that as a backdrop, I'd like to go into what it is that I'm talking about. In the year 2000, right before, probably a month or so before the marriage of the Lamb, I was absorbed into the African Hebrew Israelite community under the auspices of the Kingdom of Yah, under the direction and leadership, spiritual leadership of Ammi. I was in Atlanta, Georgia. My family and I, my wife, and at that time, my second son, ZERAHKYAH, he was about a year, close to a year. And we had moved to Atlanta. We were introduced to the community, and I immediately rose in love with the community. I was introduced to it by the Tsar at that time, Ammi, and I was fascinated. I attended the day after speaking with Tsar Ammi, I attended the Yom Kareem the following day, and then the Institute of Divine Understanding the day after, and immediately, I never left from that point. So School of the Prophet, absorption class, and different things, I was there. I began to work a part-time shift at the restaurant, and also I was delivering sandwiches. The thing about Atlanta was I had lost my balance financially because I had lost a job due to a dispute with one of the managers at the car lot that I had worked at, or the car dealership rather, and so it put me in a very vicarious situation. I had begun working with a company called booktech.com and was receiving $400 a week in payment for my services, but the man that was paying me went on vacation to Europe, and I had to wait 2 weeks for him to come back. Consequently, in Atlanta, you can't be late 5 days on your rent without facing eviction. So though I had money coming in, I had 3 weeks worth of pay coming owed to me. Because I couldn't get it at that time, we were forced to move out of our apartment. We moved in with a sister who was also in absorption class with us, and Coach Shavivia. And it was harmonious from the beginning, but then the financial situation began to really pull on the relationship, understandably so. Because once I got that final check from booktech.com, that ended our relationship, and it was kind of hard or difficult for me to find a job. But once I had been absorbed, I was instructed by Nasik Ram to go ahead and work with a Kazikaz landscaping company, which at that time I was led to believe was a kingdom entity. I worked anywhere from 8 hours to sometimes 15 hours a day with a Kazikaz company, and the pay was very, very minimal, to say the least. At times I would bring home never more than $200 in a week's time, irregardless of the work that was put in. I was working maybe 3 to 4 days with her. The vehicle she had was a little too small for my legs to accommodate my long legs, and I couldn't drive. I couldn't maneuver the stick shift and drive that vehicle. And the brother who was also in absorption, his name was David, it turned to Ben Yahu after we graduated absorption. He testified that, I attempted to drive the vehicle and just could not fit behind the wheel. Some of the leadership had accused me of being lazy, saying that I didn't want to drive, but I in fact had a witness to verify that I couldn't maneuver the vehicle properly. consequently, I ended up, as I fell deeper and deeper in the financial hole, I ended up leaving the Kokazika's company, and it was to the displeasure of the leadership. My Isha, Vashti at that time, her mother came from New York and knew that we were having a rough way to go because I had asked to be absorbed into the Nation House entities, and I was told by a tour, his name is escaping me at this time, but there were only 2 Crown brothers, and I was told by the Crown brother that runs Soul Vegetarian number 2 that I was not allowed entry into the Nation houses because I didn't have any money and I would be a liability to the Brotherhood. That was a misnomer because I did have money coming in, but it just was not a sufficient amount of money to keep up with the $550 a month rent that I was being charged, and as well as try to take care of my family. And I thought that the major purpose for the communal living was that we pull our resources, minimize our expenses, and do much more with far less. To my dismay, I was awakened to the reality that that was not the case, that I wasn't invited. Consequently, my Isha's mother came from New York, told us about a Section 8 program wherein if we allowed my wife and my child, ZERAHKYAH at that time, to go into a shelter, then she would be put on an emergency list, and after maybe a month's time, we would be granted a Section 8 voucher, which would allow us to get housing in our own housing at a very minimal expense. I thought this was a wise move, and once we got the housing, with the spirit that we had, we would even open up one or two of the rooms to, citizens in the kingdom. When Nasi Gram got wind that my wife was actually in the shelter, I was called into a sitting, and I was told that I was basically a failure as a husband, and I had really committed a taboo by putting my wife in harm's way, allowing her to be in this shelter. And I was told I was relieved from duty at the restaurant and told that I needed to go ahead and get my life together. And I suggested, could I either go to Boston, back to Boston, where my brother had a grocery store, and I would be working at least $500 a week, and I would report weekly to the extension in New York, or if I could go ahead and be absorbed into the Cleveland mission, because my physical father, Imam Qasim Khan, was the Amir of the First Cleveland Mosque in Cleveland, Ohio, and he had a connection with Ford Motor Company and they were offering a job for me at the pay rate of approximately $22 to $25 an hour. We opted for the latter, and we were granted permission to go ahead to Cleveland, and I asked once I got my life together if I could return to Atlanta, and Nasi Gram said, well, you really don't have to go, just get your life together down here right now. But I did. I went ahead and went to Cleveland. The day that we were packing up to go to Cleveland, Ak Mikael, who they call the Saint Mikael, was running the Wisdom Hut. And he told me, it's very rare that folks have the opportunity to reinvent themselves. But he said that if I meditate, pray, and reflect, and do a serious assessment, the ZERAHKYAH that got into that car in Atlanta does not have to be the ZERAHKYAH that gets out of the car in Cleveland, Ohio. and I could totally reinvent myself. I took that to extreme heart. I reflected the whole way there. I didn't listen to any music. I conversed with my wife at times, but I did a lot of soul searching and reflected, meditating as I drove from Atlanta to Cleveland. And when I got to Cleveland, I was immediately absorbed into the Cleveland mission. The following day after me getting there, I checked in and I was in Brotherhood. The day after the Brotherhood, I was introduced to Nasiga Haron. We spent the entire day together. He first had a conversation with Maisha and myself and spoke about basically style versus substance, saying that, you know, from mission to mission, from the leadership of one prince to another, you may notice different styles, but the substance remains the same. Me and Nasiga Haron, we immediately formed a bond that an affectionate bond that I really, really appreciated. There was even a time that I had asked if I could be known or called by ZERAHKYAH bin Nasiga Haron. He told me we would talk further about that, but that never came to fruition. Now, following the advice of Saint Michael, I totally reinvented myself. I didn't come asking anybody for anything. I initially moved in, me and my family moved in with my father, and I was working for a temp agency for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And from a temp agency, I moved on to Target department store. And I worked at Target for one day because a greater opportunity presented itself in the form of a management position at Radio Shack. Now, following the advice of Saint Michael, I totally reinvented myself. I didn't come asking anybody for anything. I initially moved in, me and my family moved in with my father, and I was working for a temp agency for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And from a temp agency, I moved on to Target department store. And I worked at Target for one day because a greater opportunity presented itself in the form of a management position at Radio Shack. I excelled the management course. I passed every exam. I began to, the store that I had began to be the assistant manager of was the last store in terms of, they were on the bottom in terms of cellular phone sales, and I took them from the bottom to number 3 in the whole city. The only major competition we had to deal with was that of the major malls, whose foot traffic is incomparable to the strip malls in which I worked at. But nevertheless, I actually became the #1 salesperson in the city of Cleveland for cellular phones, bar none. Every day, as I would start my car to go to work, of course I would raise the ark, and I would pray a sincere prayer that Yah Israel would bless my hand and allow me to be the best salesman of the day, not for my own sake, and not simply for the sake of my family, but for the sake of the mission and the overall kingdom. That we could fortify the Cleveland mission and ultimately expand the borders of the kingdom upon the earth. That was my prayer. I understood the power of prayer. and I invoked the power of prayer, and I took that spirit to work with me every day, and I excelled. When my father and I, two men in the same house, particularly because we were of different faiths, it began to put a strain on our relationship. Consequently, we moved out to my sister's house temporarily. We were at my sister's for less than a month, and my wife, who was pregnant with my youngest son, Tesher, she would appear to be an emotional, I won't say nervous breakdown, but an emotional breakdown. She was crying, and I understood the conditions at my sister's were slightly above horrific. So I sent her to New York to be comforted by her mother during the time of her pregnancy. I think at that point she was maybe 4 months pregnant, 4 to 5 months. So we sent her to New York for a particular amount of time, so that when she came back, maybe there would be only a month before she was to deliver the baby. And so when she went on to New York, I bared down. I worked hard as I could, and eventually my sister had moved out of the apartment. Actually, I came home from work, and her husband were gone. They had moved out, and I stayed that night, and I called Nasika Haron the next day, and I was assigned living quarters in a bayit on Tuscarora Drive, Street, or Avenue. At that time, Tuscarora was in real bad shape. It was owned by a Cote Illanite, and it was in horrific shape. And she was actually liquidating her property, so she was closing it out. So we had only been there for maybe a month and a half before it was time to leave out. Now, leaving out, we had begun to look around for housing, and Nasika Haron wanted us to live in kind of suburbia. I was offered a house, an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment by a Cote Illanite right over top of the restaurant, Soul Vegetarian at Kilimanjaro, a 2-bedroom apartment for $300. And I thought that was great because I was doing very well financially at Radio Shack. I was making no less than $500 to $600 a week consistently. During the holiday season, I was bringing in somewhere upwards to from $800 to $900 per week. But I was told by Nasika Haron to hold up on moving into that apartment, that we were going to take the money that I earned and put it towards a bayit for not only my family but 3 or 4 other families, Royale's family included. And so I did that. I was ever so obedient to leadership. And anything that I say, I have witnesses. And in the letter that I had written to Ben Ammi so many times, well, I had written it once, but I had sent it, as I said before, about 10 times. It was always intercepted. But in that letter, every time I brought up an incident or I mentioned someone's name, at the end of each paragraph, I would also mention the names of those who would witness for me, along with their telephone numbers. So, in essence, I could really understand why my letter never seen the light of day. And so now, here we are at we moved into a bayit on Woodmere Drive. The rent was extremely high. It was probably about $1,250 a month, and I figured, you know, if it's 4 of our families, then that's only $300 a month, but I was wrong. I ended up consistently paying no less than $1,000 with the rent and the utilities. Sometimes it was even as much as $1,500. Now, I had been told that me and the head brother, Ak Royale, were splitting the rent, but I couldn't understand how, if the rent was $1,250 and I was sometimes paying $1,500, how that was a 50-50 split. That must mean we used every utility and left every light and burnt every eye on the stove 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 30 days a month. But I paid it, no problem. There was never any friction on my part. However, I was concerned for many reasons. There were brothers in the mission who were constantly, whenever we went to Brotherhood, we were constantly behind. There was assessment after assessment to try to catch up with the book amount, the money that was owed to Washington, our Communicators Press, for all of the Ben Ammi's writings that Cleveland had gotten on credit and was never able to pay for. There was always the rent at Kilimanjaro. There was always some kind of expense, the expense of the State House. So there was always collections, and there was always a strain, coupled with the fact that there were brothers that were unemployed or underemployed. Now, Ak Royale and myself lived under the same roof, so we communicated all the time. On the onset, our relationship was harmonious. I came up with an idea as I was working at Radio Shack. A brother by the name of Vince Bookings came into my store, and he bought 10 walkie-talkies off of me. And I asked him, what did he need? You know, part of the procedures of salesmanship is to qualify the customer, find out what it is he needs, what he's going to be using it for, and then we could basically either upgrade them or downgrade them to the equipment that would suit him best. So in me qualifying him, I found out that he was a property manager, and immediately when he told me this, I asked him, was he interested in subcontracting the work, any work that he had? And he said that's the foundation of his business. He has the knack or the gift of gab, so he can go and win any cleaning contract that he wanted. But his problem was always a stable labor force. So in my mind, I immediately created a cleaning company. And I told him that I had a cleaning company and I had competent brothers that could take one of the contracts and do the work. Me and Vince Bookings, we developed a relationship. We had 3 meetings. I invited Ak Royale into every single meeting. Ak Royale then came on board with me, and we decided, while I was working at Radio Shack and Ak Royale was continuing to work at Home Depot, Ak Kanaya was just leaving the post office, or he had been gone for the post office for a short amount of time already, and basically had free time. So what we did, we brought him on board and sent out Kanaya to basically shadow the labor force that Vince Bookings had for one of the housing projects called Longwood Housing Development in Cleveland, Ohio. And so it was about 8 hours worth of work, and he said that he sees that it really shouldn't take that amount of time, you know, but it would be easy for us to do something like that. Once we got the assurance from Kanaya that it was doable, we went again and sat down with Vince Bookings, and we agreed. We did one more walkthrough together, and I developed a strategy. There were 38 buildings, 10 of them which were, they were all 3 floors, but the first 10 were extremely large, and they were the most atrocious of all of the buildings. The other buildings, they were smaller, the hallways were smaller, and it was something that could be cleaned by one individual. So we agreed to systematically, all 3 of us would go in and knock out the 10 together, and then we would break off, and we would all have about 5 or 6 buildings that we would do independently. And so the business began to, we became very impressive to Vince Bookings, to the extent that he invited us to another sit-down meeting, and he offered us all of the contracts that he had, because he had observed our competency and knew that we had kept our word and we had done a magnificent, a magnificent job. Vince gave us more cleaning contracts, which took our pay. Although I had created the business in thought, deed, and action, I had established that account. I made the meeting with Vince, and I did everything that needed to be done to make the business a reality. I invited Ak Royale and Ak Kanaya in as equal partners, thereby splitting whatever amount I was to receive, splitting it 3 ways exactly. Out of my money, I set up a bank account so that we could clear the checks and everybody could get paid what they were to pay. And then I also came up with an idea that if we all put 10% back into the company, then we could grow. They were not in favor of 10% because now we were making close to $800 a piece with all of the cleaning contracts, and they really had a problem with giving up $80 out of $800. So we agreed to just put $20 a piece into the back into the account. Ak Royale for at least 2 months would not put anything in, and then when he put the $20, his first $20 in, he withdrew approximately $150 to $200 for repairs on his vehicle, since we had used his car to drive back and forth to some of the work sites. And then friction began, and prior to that I was told to send a letter up. At that time, at the foreman of the company, Nasik Aharon, was in the Holy Land, and he instructed us to put together a proposal or just a notification as to what it was that we were doing, something that would be submitted to Ben Ammi. And I designed the letterhead, the graphics, the forms that we filled out, the invoices and different things. And I also wrote basically a profile of when the company started, the name of the company, which was UCRS, or Universal Commercial and Residential Services. And I sent it up to, I think I emailed it, and as well as sent a physical copy through someone. And I recall walking past Ak Royale's room, and he was on the phone with Nasik Aharon. Nasik Aharon was telling him that he was impressed with the professionalism of the packet that had been sent. And Royale took all credit. He said that I typed it, but he was standing over my shoulder dictating everything to be put in the letter. And that was my first encounter with deception. When I was and I was hoping that my ears were deceiving me, but in fact the brother had taken credit for all that I had done thus far. We eventually began to have conflicts and run-ins over finances. I was accused of stealing money out of the account because, as I said, for the first 2 months of the existence of the company, Royale refused to put any money into the account, and then he withdrew $150. If you do the math, $150 when there's only 2 people in 2 months' time. If you do the math, $150 when there's only 2 people in 2 months' time paying putting in $20 a piece, then that's all of the money. So when Kanaya check the account and see that there's little to no money in it, then Royale said, well, ZERAHKYAH must have taken it. And so seeds of disunity, seeds of suspicion were beginning to be planted. Nasi Aharon came back from Israel, and he called me into a sitting, and he was telling me things like, you know, you were obscure and unknown and undervalued in Atlanta, and now you've come here, and we've shined some light on you, allow you to move in particular ways, and it seems that you're forgetting who raised you up, and you're moving further and further away. And in my heart, I was vexed because I didn't understand where that was coming from. Here I am. I had taken the monies that I was earning from Radio Shack. In fact, when I was at Radio Shack, on more than several occasions, Nasi Aharon would get in his car and follow me to work on payday, so that when my check was cashed, all of the money would be handed over to him, and then I would be given $25 to $50 to sustain myself as that money was being collected to put down as a security deposit for the buy it on Woodmere. Maisha went ahead and tapped a savings account that her grandfather had established for her for the same amount of money that I had given, and I believe Royale's Isha Akodamitsa did the same thing. Royale's portion was never presented. Instead, a deal was made with the landlord that for the first, I believe, 4 months of us living there, the rent would be a little higher than the agreed upon rent, so that payment would be given, and once his portion, and I believe it was $1,000, once the $1,000 was satisfied, then it would go back down to the $1,250. So we were actually paying upwards to $1,300 or something like that per month, and maybe $1,350, $1,375, something like that per month, until the other percentage was satisfied, which meant that not only did I come up with my portion, and Maisha come up with her portion, which I eventually replaced. So in essence, I gave both portions. Then I also had to pay in on Royale's portion. So it was not fair at all, but it was the kingdom, and and I had reasoned, in speaking with Nasi Aharon about the financial burden. But then I told him, I said, there were some of us that had went on to leave America in the 60s and went and dealt with the hells of the bush of Liberia for 2.5 years, and they paid those kind of dues. And remembering the class that was given at my absorption graduation, and the Crown Brother saying, you know, that he was there, he paid those kind of dues, but we all have dues to pay. They're not the same. So in reflecting on that, I told the Prince that, you know, maybe this is the dues that I have to pay. And in actuality, if you compare the obtaining, you know, a few pieces of paper with some dead white men faces on it, when you compare that to having to sleep in the bush and deal with driver ants and snakes and monsoons and different things, then if the only dues I had to pay was finding some greenbacks with dead white people on them, then it's my pleasure to do that. So I didn't really complain like that. But as we went on in the business, and as portions were divvied out and different things, there began to be more and more friction as to who would control the money. You know, is ZERAHKYAH stealing the money? And before you know it, we found ourselves in sitting after sitting. And there was one time when actually, when the first payment that we had gotten, once we secured the bigger contracts, we gave it up as a free will, basically a first fruit and free will offering. We gave it to Sar Eliyahu to assist in the building of the new restaurant on Coventry, the sole vegetarian that we were, because we were closing out the one on Lee Road and moving to Coventry. And so we gave our first paycheck as a first fruit and free will offering, you know, and basically to show our commitment to, you know, what it is that we were trying to build as a mission and as the kingdom at large. And when the money was kind of scarce, Royale, he had been in the habit, I guess when he was working at Home Depot, he was never making the kind of money that was sufficient to take care of his family and himself and the responsibilities that were put upon him as head brother. And so he would go to one of those quick loan places on a frequent basis. They knew him by his first name. And so he asked me and Kima and Kanaya if we wanted to go to the Quicken Loan to get money against what our first check would be. And so we agreed. We needed some money, you know, we needed food and different things, and there were some assessments that had to be met. And so we went, and he pulled out $300, and there was a 15% repayment fee. And so we agreed that each one of us would get a third of what he pulled out, which is $100, plus we would pay back the 15%. So that meant that each one of us would be paying back $115, simple mathematics. But we never saw the money. So we never did see the money. What had happened, instead of us getting the money, Ark Royale held on to all $300. The following brotherhood, or the next brotherhood that we attended, there was an assessment that had come down. I don't think it came down from Jerusalem, but something that was happening in Cleveland that needed to be addressed, and every brother was made to pay $65. Ark Royale notified us that he would go ahead and take the $65 out of the 100 that we were going to be given as individuals. So I was expecting to get the other $35 and at least get some bread and soy milk or something for the family, but that didn't happen. I never saw the other money, but a week later, Ark Royale tells me that it's time for us to pay the money back. And he said, you know, he gave us, he went ahead and paid that assessment for us, so we need to pay that back plus $15 that we had agreed would be paid back to the check cashing place. And I said, no, we didn't agree to pay $15 back. We agreed to pay 15%. And because we understood that we were going to be getting $100 a piece, 15% of that $100 would be $15. So since we've only gotten $65, then we're only obligated to pay the $65 plus 15% on the 65. And he said that, you see, that's why people have a problem with you. And at that time, I didn't know people had a problem with me. And I know that I had shared with him about how I spent the first 10 years of my Hebraic life under the leadership of Yahweh ben Yahweh in the nation of Yahweh. And when I had moved to Atlanta, that's when I had embraced the kingdom and come on in. And I told him about some experiences that I had and how we built a multi-million-dollar empire in Boston, Massachusetts. And the brother that was the head or the elder there, he, you know, ended up taking everything and leaving me, my brother, and those that had been involved with the group integrally with nothing. And we basically had to start life all over. That's why I was in Atlanta. To me, that was my blessing because I had found the kingdom. And had he not been as shiesty or crooked as he was, then I would have still been in Boston basking in the glow of wealth. And so I was kind of happy that things happened the way they were. And reflecting on Stevie Wonder's song, Kiss Lonely Goodbye, he said, if given the chance to live again, I'd change not a single thing, because that little thing could sadly mean that you to me fate would not bring. That's so beautiful. And that was my sentiment, that, you know, irregardless of what I lost, I had properties in the millions of dollars in my name. And all of this could be verified here in Boston. Check the public records, and I can give you scores of witnesses. But to date, I know that witnesses don't really count for too much. But I'm praying in all the sincerity that through this medium that we're embarking on, that change will come. And so I'm going to go ahead and get back on the point. So anyway, because I had taken the stand against the flim-flam that the brother was trying to pull, and at first I thought maybe, you know, it was not ill-intended. Maybe he just didn't realize that he didn't give us the rest. But then when he told me that I got what I deserved from the other group, because, you know, I'm always agitating and different things, you know. And so Akanaya, for whatever reason, he ended up chiming in on behalf of Royale. Now this brother, he got the same 65 that I did and was made to pay the same $15 back on something that he didn't get in full. So I would have thought that he would have kind of, you know, sided with me and say, yeah, well, this is what we agreed on, and we need to stick with that. But instead, he went ahead and stuck with what his partner was saying to me. And so I was grieved about that. Once we had finished our work shift, I called Sar Eliyahu and told him that we had problems, and he put me on hold. He called Nasik Aharon. And so we did a three-way, and I laid all of the problems out and told them that I foresee bigger problems, and rather than have a fallout with my brothers, I would rather go ahead and give them the company and remove myself from any interest of the company, any money to be gained from the company, whatever, because I was still in good standing with Radio Shack because of my performance there at that time. And it would be nothing for me to call the manager who wanted me back anyway and go ahead back to where I was at least making enough to take care of my family and those that were in the house that I was. I was told by Nasik that he would call me later on that evening and to stay by the phone. He called me back and he scolded me something terrible about me not thinking about the welfare of my brothers, and how could I dare even consider leaving something that we created for the sake of brotherhood and going back to work for the Gentile, you know. And he said that was proof that I was still a victim of the Greco-Roman thought system, that I would leave my brothers and go back and work for the adversary. And so after the beating that I received, the verbal beating that I received on the phone, I agreed that I would go back to the brothers, make amends, and we would continue to work. And we did. Friction became almost a norm, and it got to the point where, you know, although we had continued for at least a year working, we were still having run-ins, and poor decisions were being made. Based on decisions that were being made, we ended up losing some of the precious contracts that we had gained. One of the poor decisions was the fact that that the brother Vince Bookins had asked us to do him a special favor, that OSHA was going to be doing an inspection on one of the factories that we were cleaning. And there were some bathrooms that were not on our schedule, but if we would go out of our way to clean those so that the company wouldn't face a shutdown, that he would compensate us for the work. We had started, between myself, Kanaya, and Royale, we had started a cycle of, once we had brought other brothers on to work with us, we didn't have to all go ourselves. So I would go one day and take the two new workers. One of the workers that were there and was even there at the very incident that I'm speaking of is Akaliabir, who is now residing in the Atlanta mission. In fact, now he's known as Aliabir bin Nasik Ran. He was one of the workers, along with a Jake brother who's not in the kingdom, but he was a good worker, hard-working brother named Russ, I believe. And they went with Royale to do the cleaning, and he assigned them to do the extra bathrooms. And then he came to me the next day and said, we need to type up a new invoice to present to Vince Bookins that would include the extra work that we had to do. And he said that he was going to charge the brother $400. And I frowned upon that, and I disagreed with it vehemently. And my reason was, Royale had, prior to this incident, he had hired a sister from the housing projects to work for the company. The first day, I will admit, she was very good. She impressed all three of us when she cleaned the restroom area and different things, so we went ahead and allowed her to work. And she stopped showing up, and she started doing very poor performances when she did show up. So I told them that we had to let her go. And when we alerted her that, you know, we no longer need her services, she went back a day that we weren't scheduled to be there.
and she made whoever let her in the door believe that she was supposed to be there, and her and whoever was with her, they stole a large screen television right out of the room or the office of the general manager. We were saddened by that, and we were alerted by Vince bookings that we were, in jeopardy and danger of losing the contract. But what we did, we went ahead and agreed to pay for it. So Vince, he immediately paid restitution to the general manager, replaced the television, and then he took it out of our pay. That was fine with us. So now, fast forward to Vince needing a favor from us, that we would go out of our way and clean the bathrooms. I was saying hallelujah when this was brought to me, because I thought that it was a chance for us to make good on the bad that had occurred. So when he said that we can go ahead and charge what we feel is a fair price for the extra work, I didn't want to charge anything, because we owed him one. Even though we had made restitution, we had allowed money to be deducted from what he owed us. I just thought it would have been a good business measure to put us back in full good grace, that we wouldn't charge anything. But Royale insisted that we pay $400, and before I drew up that particular invoice, I called Nasik Aharon. We had a meeting over at the State House. I laid my story out. Royale laid his story out, and Nasik Aharon told me that since I wasn't there and I didn't do the physical work, that I did not have the right to say how much it should be worth. And then I reminded them, well, based on the testimony of the two brothers that worked, neither did Royale do the physical work. And I tried to articulate that, the danger of charging so much for such a little job would cause the company. And the example I used would be, if at 3 o'clock in the morning, my baby needed some diapers or Pampers, and I had to run out to a store, a convenience store that was open 24 hours a day. And for that convenience, you know that it's going to cost more. So what would normally cost maybe $7 in a grocery store or supermarket, now I'm paying about $17 at a convenience store. I'm going to get it because I need the Pampers right now. But what will happen during the day when my baby needs the Pampers and it's not an emergency? I will never go. And even during the evening, I will prepare myself from that point on to never be in a situation where I need to call on that store again for something, because I know how much it's going to cost. So because we did the work and he told us that we can charge him, I knew that no matter what we said, even if we said the job was worth $1,000, it was so important and the work had already been done that the brother would have paid that. But that would mean that whenever other contracts became available, they would never be handed over to us, because not only had we found out by hiring somebody that would steal a television, but now we're blatantly overcharging the brother. And so, but Nasik Aharon said that Royale's price was fair because he had done the work and oversaw the brothers that did the work. So again, following the orders of leadership, I went ahead and printed up the invoice for that particular job. Vince asked, did we think that was fair? Royale said absolutely. I didn't say anything, and so He got the $400, all of which he kept for himself. And the brothers that actually did the work, you can call Eliabir, Ben Nasik Ram, and ask him how much did he get for that particular job. And I wish I had the contact numbers for Brother Russ, so that he could testify he got not a penny more from what was on his regular pay. So all of the money went to Royale, which was another problem because, again, if I was working at McDonald's and I made a burger, maybe a Big Mac, and it sold for $4, me as the burger flipper, I don't keep the $4. You know, I agree to receive the same amount per hour that I've been working, but this logic didn't count in this field either. So Royale was able to keep all $400. Nothing had to go back to the company. Nothing had to be divvied up amongst any of the workers or the owners of the company, the co-owners of the company. So these are the kind of things that began to happen over and over. We found ourselves in meetings. I'm being accused of taking money, so we have a meeting. One time we had a meeting about the kesef, and what I did was I went back and got, well, the brothers, Royale and Kanaya, they went to the bank and got a printout of all of the transactions. There were 2 credit cards or debit cards. There was the card that I had. So these are the kind of things that began to happen over and over. We found ourselves in meetings. I'm being accused of taking money, so we have a meeting. One time we had a meeting about the kesef, and what I did was I went back and got, well, the brothers, Royale and Kanaya, they went to the bank and got a printout of all of the transactions. There were 2 credit cards or debit cards. There was the card that I had and the card that Royale had, because I had put him on the account. And so what Royale did not know was that the 2 debit cards had different numbers. And for years, I carried this information with me because I knew that eventually I would have my day in court. That day never came, so in the process of so much movement, I no longer have those papers, but in the meeting that was held at Soul Vegetarian Restaurant on Coventry, we sat at the table, Kanaya, Royale, myself, and Sar Eliyahu, and we put all of the papers on the table, and each one of us had copies of them, but Royale looked over and noticed that my copies had highlights on them, like yellow highlights. And he asked me what was the highlights, and I said, well, the highlights are here to show that the ones that are not highlighted, these are the transactions that I made, either deposits or withdrawals from the account with my card. But these yellow highlights indicate what was taken from your card. Now, there was another incident 3 or 4 days prior to that. Maybe there was a death in Royale's family in Detroit or whatever city. There was a reason, a very important reason why he had to leave and go to another city. It could have been Chicago, could have been Detroit, one of those 2 cities. It's been 7 years, so I'm not sure what city it was. But I do remember he needed to withdraw some money from the account to rent a car, and that money would be paid back a couple days later when we got our next check. He rented the car, went to Chicago or the city that he went to, and when he came back, his check was waiting for him, but no money was ever deposited. And so at that same meeting at Soul Vegetarian on Coventry, I brought that up and I showed it how the brother said that, you know, we agreed that the brother would take money to rent a car and he never returned the money. So Sar Eliyahu asked Royale, did you return the money? He said, yes. And then I said, well, see, here's the withdrawal, but where is the deposit? And he said, well, I didn't give it, I didn't put it in the bank at that time. What I did is I had it deducted from my check. And I said, well, the funny thing about that is your check came after you got your check after you got back and not before you went. So you had it in full. So if you had it deducted, it would still have to show as a deposit, you know, because you had all of your money in full. And so he kept stuttering, and then Sar Eliyahu said something that I thought would equate to my vindication. He said, boy, listen, you done sat here and changed your story 3 times. You said that you paid it, then you said that you had it deducted, then you said that you paid half now and the other half a week later, you know. And so I said to myself, yes, we finally got him. Finally got him after all of the deception. Now that the cards are on the table, Sar Eliyahu and his wisdom is seeing that the brother is being deceptive, subtle, and lying. And so Sar said that, boy, you done changed your story 3 times. But then he said, but I believe in my heart that you put that money in the bank. I couldn't figure that. That blew me away. But that wasn't the only thing that was going to blow me away. There were other things to come. Because of the friction between me and the brothers, Nasik Aharon called me and he told me to look up the word seem, S-E-E-M, and to get my dictionary. And he was coming to pick me up to go for a ride, but he wanted me to have that information. 20 minutes later, the horn blows. I go and get in the car, but I not only take a dictionary, I brought my J.I. Rodell synonym finder into the car with me. In the car, waiting for me was Nasik Aharon and David Nelson, formerly of the Last Poets. We went for a ride to who knows where, but Nasik asked me did I have the information. He asked me to read the definitions to S-E-E-M, seem, and I read the definitions, and then I told him that, listen, I also brought the synonym finder, and I read off synonyms to the word seem, because I wasn't sure where it was going. I was just following instructions and then adding to whatever in an effort to assist him maybe in his research or whatever he was compiling that kind of information. And then as we were returning from our trip, he said, ZERAHKYAH, let me ask you, why do you hate me and why do you hate Sar Eliyahu so much? And I said, now see, I don't even know where that's coming from, because I never once said that I hated you or the minister. In fact, I have nothing but love for all of leadership, especially for yourself and for the minister. I said, our only contention, the only breach in our relationship has been because of all of this mess involving me and the other 2 brothers. And I tell you that when I wanted to share the wealth of the business with the brotherhood and be able to employ more brothers, Ak Royale stood in the kitchen with me at Woodmere and said, no, they weren't there, this is ours. And so when I told Nasik Aharon that right in front of Ak Royale, he told me that he never said that. So I said, I don't have a problem with you, Nasik, or a problem with Sar, but that brother is not telling the truth. He's emphatically lying to you by saying that he didn't say that. And then Nasi Aharon said, well, you saying that he's lying, but you just looked up the word seem. It just seemed like he's lying. And I was taken aback very far, because I had never been given that kind of benefit of the doubt. I had never been told by anybody that my story had changed up 3 or 4 times, but you still believe in your heart that I put money in the bank, when in fact the paper was right there showing that no money was put in the bank. The brother's story changed in your face 3 times, yet and still the benefit of the doubt was given to the brother that he had in fact put the money in the bank. I had never been given the benefit of the doubt that if you don't believe something that I said, if there's any doubt, then go look up the word seem, because it only seems as if I'm not telling the truth. So I knew that this was a foreign and a different kind of fight that I was engaged in. Several days later, we were in another meeting at the State House, and Nasi Aharon, in the middle of the conversation between me, Royal, Kanaya himself, he asked me, let me ask you this, ZERAHKYAH, and don't feel a particular way. Don't feel as if the question is leading or it's going to go anywhere, or I'm going to be mad or have any kind of feelings. I just want to know, brother to brother, do you feel as if sometimes I'm defending or sticking up for Royale? And I said, yes, Cain, I do. You know, and then he said, I'm not going to have anybody questioning my character and this and that. And then and so I was scolded, and he said he was tired of me. He's through with me. He had been trying to teach me. I'm incapable of hearing, and there's nothing else that can be said or done to help me. And so we really, I saw that our relationship was bruised almost beyond repair. There was another incident where David Nelson had been exposed to the gifting program that was held through the internet, whereas you put money in, maybe $200, $250, you give it to somebody, and then you move on the board, and then somebody comes behind you and give it until you matriculate up to that position where you're now receiving $250 from the next 10 people that's coming on the board. And he laid out such a convincing program to Nasi Aharon that Nasi, during Brotherhood, told all of the brothers to get involved in it, because this would be used as a fundraiser, a way to raise money for the nation or for ourselves or whatever. It was just a good thing to get into. Following instructions, I got into it. I jumped into it with both feet. I signed my Isha, my former Isha, up. We took $250, and I began to bring people in. Me and a couple brothers, we printed up little business cards. We would go to the strip malls and other shopping plazas and different things, and pass out the cards and invite people into the program. Some of the saints, not all of the brothers got involved. A couple of the brothers got involved. My Isha's money turned from $250 to close to $2,000. We bought a van with the money. Ak Royale, Ak Kanaya, eventually they got in, and they asked me about setting it up, and I offered my services to show them how to check their board on the computer and different things. They never took me up on it, and the thing about the program was there was a $10 a month charge, But if you went beyond that particular day or whatever, it would go from $10 to $30 and so on and so forth. The brothers, they never, once I offered to show them how to manipulate their board and how to matriculate from one position to the other, and they declined to go, not in word, but in deed, they inclined to, or declined to be taught. Then I lifted my hands away from theirs and I began to work on my own and my Ishas and one for Nasik Aharon. And then a coach Sadiqa in Cleveland had given me money and asked me to work hers, and that, you know, when she get paid, I would get paid a portion from it. And she kept true to her word. But then when the brothers, when their payments were due, and we went ahead and drew the money from the account to pay theirs, theirs was overdue, so $30 from each one of them had to be drawn from the account and paid. Again, there was an issue that I took money out, and I said, yeah, but the money that I took out was money to pay for you all's account. And they said, well, why was it $30 instead of $10? I said, $30 because your account was overdue. And Kanaya had the unintimidated gall to ask me, why did I allow his account to be in default in the first place? And I said, well, I'm taking care of my own account, my Ishal's account, Nasik Aharon's account, and the Coach Sadiq's. I can't spread myself that thin. Because in order to succeed in this particular business, it requires going out and getting other people involved. You can't stay stagnant. And Nasik told me that, you know those brothers don't know anything about computers. You should have took it upon yourself to take care of them. What are you talking about? You can't take care of their account. What kind of brother are you? And I said, but Nasik, I offered to teach them. That's not good enough. Maybe they don't have time to learn that. So I couldn't figure out how they didn't have time to learn how to take care of their own business, but I had time to take care of so many accounts, my own, plus two brothers who don't have time. And my work schedule, their work schedule is no different from mine because we work at the same place. So these are the kind of incidents that we were steadily encountering, and just as I had predicted with Vince Bookings, it came back to haunt us. The $400 overcharge came back to haunt us because the account, he began to strip the accounts away from us. He told us that he called me one day when we were at the basketball court. And he said, don't worry about going to the factory tomorrow. We're no longer going to need you for that account, and we're no longer going to need you for this other account. You right now just worry about Longwood. Longwood was a housing development, so that we had been stripped of everything. And I walked onto the court and told Sir Aliyahu, we just lost the other accounts. And him trying to preempt whatever feelings I may have or accusations on, these brothers' bad moves has cost us our livelihood, to a greater extent. And he said, no, it's nobody's fault. It's the economy, and the brother just wanted to go his own way, and this, that, and the third. And so, meanwhile, my responsibilities financially didn't decrease at all, but they started increasing, although my money was now decreasing. It got to the point that I saw that I could not financially handle being on Woodmere anymore. And so my Isha and her mother had came up with the idea for us to go ahead and begin to become landowners and buy some property. Her mother, she was eventually absorbed into the nation. She has a Hebrew name, I forgot it now, but she's living in Chicago with my ex-wife. Being on Woodmere anymore. And so Maisha and her mother had came up with the idea for us to go ahead and begin to become landowners and buy some property. Her mother, she was eventually absorbed into the nation. She has a Hebrew name, I forgot it now, but she's living in Chicago with my ex-wife, her husband, and my children. And and her credit was sterling. She wanted to go ahead and get some property. And so it now enters Aknahum, who was at that time a real estate broker and, you know, businessman of sorts that I was never too clear on. But what I do know is that all of a sudden he was integrally involved in the buildings or the houses that we were going to look at. We went to one particular duplex and we were pretty set on that being the one that we were going to purchase. And there was a lot of red tape, a lot of reasons that we couldn't get it at that time, but it was in motion. It was in motion, and simultaneously, Maisha had to keep going to meetings with the seller and her real estate agent, and she let me know that Aknahum would accompany her on those meetings, and so the meetings that always coincided with my work schedule, my shift at the restaurant. Now normally, the shift that I held at Soul Vegetarian on Coventry, I can't remember everybody who was out in the front, but the two people in the kitchen during my shifts on Yom Revi'i was myself and Aknahum. That only panned out maybe 2 or 3 times, because now every Yom Revi'i, every Wednesday, he was nowhere to be found anymore. And I remember Akima being the manager of the restaurant, and I would ask him, where's my help? Because the orders was coming in, and I moved slow. I'll admit that, and anybody who knows me knows that I move slow. I think pretty fast, but I move slow. I eat very slow, I talk slow sometimes, and I move slow. So Agnesiel used to kid me as being a turtle and this and that. A lot of folks had things to say like that. I never took it to heart because it is what it is. But orders would get backed up, and it was always on me to take care of all of the orders. And whenever I asked the manager, Akima, where is Nahum? Well, he's in the office taking care of business. I went to the office. He was nowhere in the office or anything. And this began to be a permanent pattern that I was, from that point until I left Cleveland, I was working that shift by myself, although on paper it was supposed to be me and Nahum. And as our business, UCRS, as the business began to decline, we were brought into a meeting with Sar Eliyahu and Nasik Aharon, and we were told that it was no longer our business per se. It was now taken over, and it now belonged to the kingdom. So UCRS had now become an official kingdom entity, fully accountable to leadership. And I was happy, because I said, you know, now we don't have to get into the bickering over money and everything. Now that it's in the hands of leadership, it will always see fairness. But then he told me that since it's now a kingdom entity, the authority is going to be given over into the hands of Ak Royal and Ak Kanaya. and I no longer have that kind of say. So they changed the name from UCRS, which was Universal Commercial and Residential Services, to simply Universal Services. You know, and so they went to Vince Bookings and told him to, from now on, to make the checks out to Universal Services, as opposed to Universal Commercial and Residential Services, and that they are the ones in charge. And then they came to me with a 1099 tax form for me to fill out, so that I would be labeled and recognized by the government as an independent contractor, thereby being responsible, alleviating them from any tax responsibilities, and I would then be responsible for my own. I'd get paid everything in full, but now I would be responsible for paying my own taxes. And I told them that, you know, I got a better idea. Rather than me filling out this silly tax form, I'm just going to go ahead down to Vince Bookings and remind him that it was me and his relationship that got the contracts in the first place, and I'd rather see the checks put in my own name and I'll divvy it out than have these brothers take what was mine, you know, that which I shared from the kindness of my heart, and then remove me from the equation in the fashion that they were doing. And then I got on the phone and told ZERAHKYAH what was going on, and that's what I was going to do, and he told me to stand still. You know, the brothers, they had permission to do what they were doing, and they're following their directives. And we went there one day to clean, and after everybody was gone, Vince Bookings was still in his office, and I asked him, could we speak? And I laid my story out, and I was delicate about it because I didn't want to show the breach in the brotherliness that was occurring. I didn't want to put our business out there like that, but at the same time, we were losing contracts, we were losing money, and responsibilities were required of me. So I had to be diplomatic. I had to deal with my commitment, my loyalty to the kingdom, and at the same time show forth some loyalty to that which was paying me so that I could sustain that which I loved so much. And so we sat there for an hour talking, and the brother Vince told me that he's not comfortable with the way things are running. He's not comfortable with Royale and Kanaya, and that if I was to go out and get some more brothers, not them, but if I was to get some new brothers and come in, that not only would the other contracts be restored, he would then give us, he was in the middle of pursuing the contract for the Cleveland Browns Stadium, and he would hand that all over to us. I got home and I was so ecstatic about it that I called initially, while I was in my car on my cell phone, I called Nasi Gaharon to tell him what I thought would be good news. That if these two brothers just fall back, you know, and do something else, the greater blessing is that we would put ourselves in a position that, man, we would probably have to send for saints from all around the country to come in and help us clean the Cleveland Browns Stadium on a weekly basis. That was nothing less than $1 million contract. I went to my shift when I got home. Before I went to my shift, I got home, and as I was changing, I got on the phone with my brother in Boston, telling him about the excitement that I had, that we were now on the verge of becoming millionaires. And the brother, he just wants me to move these two brothers out of the equation, and that he was going to give us, or he was going to put us in the running for a contract with the Cleveland Browns Stadium. This conversation was overheard by David Nelson, who took it back to Nasi Gaharon. When I went to my shift that day to the restaurant, I was told by Royale that Nasi Gaharon wants me to report to the State House immediately following my work shift. When I got done, I closed out, I went to the State House, we sat in his living room, and Nasi Gaharon told me that he's aware of the conversations that I've had and the spirit of individualism about the conversations that I've had, and he needed me to know that Vince Bookings meant no good. He's not a friend to the kingdom. In fact, he's the devil himself, and he seeks to divide us and break us apart. And so he told me to forget about pursuing anything without Royale and Kanaya being involved. So I said, "Kane," and I went back home, and then he called me at the home that either that evening or the following evening, and told me that he wants me to set up a meeting between myself, Vince Bookings, Kanaya, Royale, and Sar Eliyahu to be held at Vince Bookings' office. Now, a lot of the things about the feelings that he had towards Kanaya and towards Royale, he had said to me in a restricted confidence. Since I disclosed to him that I didn't like the way things were going, he opened up to me that he didn't like the way things were going. And then we pursued these other ideas together. So now I was being told to call back and set this meeting up, which he agreed to, but it forever changed the dynamics of our relationship, because now he feels as if I was kind of a spy or an agent who had been sent in to keep his guard down to see if there was really any contracts or anything, and then once that was exposed, then we would lower the boom and come in and say, "Aha, you got more contracts and we want them." And so that was the last conversation that I ever got to have with Vince, because our relationship was permanently soured from that point. So in comes Akaliabir, who had been working with us at Longwood Housing Project and several other cleaning contracts. This brother was coming out of the institutions. He had been exposed. He had been actually brought around by Aksuriel, but he ended up coming to the poetry events, and I put my arm around him and, you know, began to show some brotherliness along with the other brothers, Akialiel, Eliaxiel, several other sisters and different things. But the brothers in particular, we began having Shabbat classes together and different things. And I developed an affection for those brothers. Any one of them you can call and ask about me, and ask what kind of love I showed for the brothers. And you know, if truth is the guide, if truth remains constant, then the brothers will tell you, in fact, what role I played in them coming in and being fully embraced by the kingdom and fully embracing the kingdom. Akaliabir was having housing issues. He ended up moving into a house with Aharon, not Nasik, but Aharon, one of his apartments, and the rent piece was difficult. So since he was working with us, he was now being paid. And when the contracts dried up, I really couldn't afford it. You know, we had to cut everybody loose and do the work ourselves, you know, to keep that kind of money coming in. But even still, what I did was I allowed the brother to work, and I split my money in half with him. The money that I was getting from the contracts, I would split it in half when he was doing the work. And to even go a step further, I would even come down and assist him in working and still pay him for that which I could have and really should have been doing on my own, because it began to, as the money was decreasing and decreasing and decreasing, I was still responsible as a father and as a husband and as a brother in the house. I was responsible for so much, but now so little. But I was making a sacrifice, and it turns out I was making a sacrifice for a brother who was still, as things was getting so tight, he still wanted to have satellite cable television and things of that nature in his house. And like, you can't afford any luxuries. I can't afford any luxuries, and I'm paying you what I should be keeping myself. And so my wife's patterns started changing. She began working as a school teacher, but as she would normally be home by maybe 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, now because of her pursuing the housing and different things, she was coming in later and later, and the new habit was coming in from work, going straight to the bathtub, coming in, going straight to the tub and different things. If I reach out to hug her or something, she said, I'm dirty, I need to go take a bath and different things. So the little things started changing within the dynamics of our relationship. Now this is the sensitive part, because I know that this is being aired, and I know that based on so many of the comments that have been made on the vehicle in which this is being aired, that people think that this whole thing is about me losing the woman that I had, which is so far from the case, but it all ties in. And if you just bear with me, I'll lay it all out so that you can see. The strain on our relationship between me and my wife was supposedly because of the financial strain. She would come in. I recall one incident where she was screaming at me and talking about, we don't have this, we don't have that. She wanted me to go and confront Nasik because I was being made to pay $125 a month to take care of the state house, along with my other assessments, my brotherhood responsibility, paying her sisterhood responsibility, paying our book funds and different things, and I need to go and tell Nasik that we don't.
Stop sweet talking. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.
Wake up, baby. Wake up. I smell smoke. I smell smoke. Baby, wake up. Wake up. I smell smoke. I smell smoke. I stumble from my slumber trying to track down the source of course. Now it's getting hotter. Smoke turns into flames. Flames leaping from the closet like sodomites and red tights fighting for perverted rights. We gotta get out of here. This room is being consumed by the brightness of the flames and the darkness of the thick black smoke. Brightness and darkness like good and evil. Once again, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is in our midst, but it's burning fruit we cannot kiss. We gotta get out of this. Heat shattering windows like LA riots. Firefighters with axes chopping through my door, destroying everything the flames didn't have a chance to get to. Baby, wake up. Police coming to get me from my Rodney king-size bed. Coming to get me like they got Fred Hampton. Dampened spirits of dreams gone up in smoke. I wish this was a dream too, so it could perish in the inferno like all the other dreams do. Gone now are all the pictures of me shaking hands with the president. So much for little godly children shaking hands with the sons and daughters of perdition. Or even me and you sitting and laughing over a hot integrated cup of coffee. Bridges now forever burnt, but the Edmund Pettus still stands. Trapped and unliberated in a burning house, I can't get out, but the Statue of Liberty still stands. In her hands is proof that she was the arsonist.
Wake up, baby.
It was her torch that started this.
Baby, wake up.
You hear me, babies? Passed out and unconscious from too much smoke inhalation. 2/5 of my body burned to a crisp. 2/5 of my body rendered useless. So now I'm only 3/5 of a man. I ain't even got the right to vote myself out of this burning house. Outside, a crowd gathers like demons screaming, Hakuna Matata, but it's getting hotter. Down the hall, I hear voices crying, yelling, lump in my throat swelling, knowing I can't help them. Only now do I relate to Deuteronomy 28 because my seeds are being eaten by my enemies.
Wake up, baby. Baby, wake up.
Freed finally by the grace of God, but my 400-room mansion is now a memory. It took me 400 years to build this, but on one fateful night someone came along and killed this. So now outside I stand watching my house burn faster than an American flag in an Iranian's hand. Yet I scream, we gotta get out of here. Out of where, you ask, because escaping a burning house was the task. Yet and still I scream, we gotta get out of here. See, the fire that you see can't come close to the fire that's in me. My heart is burning for my soul to be free and follow the trail blazed by Marcus Garvey. For now, only do I see the stupidity of living in luxury in the land of captivity. And now I'm like, last one out, hit the light.
Last one out, hit the
now
lights.
I'm saying, last one out, hit the lights.
Last one out, hit
Word.
the lights.
Last one out, hit the lights, cause I'm about to take flight to new heights and build skyscrapers with notebook paper and walk the precious sands of the Holy Land with my Lord and Savior. So wake up, baby. Baby, wake up.